appropriate meeting notices, Jenny?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And then approval for tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion passes. Agenda is approved. All right, on to the minutes of September 24th, 2020.
I would move approval.
Motion by Bill, seconded by Linda to approve minutes from September 24th, 2020. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Public participation. Do we have anybody tonight in the audience that would like to talk to the Fire Commission or address certain issues, comments, concerns? Oh, Teresa's back.
Teresa, can you hear us okay?
Teresa?
You're just on mute right now, Teresa.
I think she's going to call in because she was still having trouble with audio.
Oh, okay.
So I'm getting her the information.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So we're on public participation. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring before the commission? I know we have a few people in the audience. It's not otherwise on the agenda.
If anyone does want to speak, you are on mute, so you need to unmute yourself. And there's a button in the lower left-hand corner.
All right, I don't hear anything, so we'll move on. Old business, discussion and possible action regarding staff shortages. I'm going to let Chief Rhodes kind of take this one. There's been some recent developments, and you should have all received an email I forwarded to you about Chief Rhodes's huge concerns and coupled with staffing shortages that we're seeing. So, Linda, you have something to say quick?
I would kind of like to make sure that Teresa's on for this discussion, that she can hear us.
Sure, we can wait a couple more moments for her to get connected up.
While we're waiting, John, I did not receive that email, so as an alternate.
Okay. The basic premise of the email was we have, with the COVID-19 situation, we have some significant staffing shortages that have existed over the past week to 2 weeks. We've always had issues staffing people on weekends, making sure that we could schedule part-time folks to work shifts. And it kind of trickled into some people being on quarantine or being positive for COVID-19. And that greatly reduced the opportunity for those people to work shifts, and it created holes otherwise not on the weekends in the weekdays. So it left a very serious concern that the chief had, and the chief was able to reconcile the issue in the interim by using Janesville staff to help float that problem and try to take care of it temporarily. But I'll let Chief talk a little bit more about that when we get Teresa on the horn here.
Mr. Chairman, we never had to dip into the Janesville staff, but that was the contingency, just for clarification, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
How's it going, Teresa?
It doesn't look like too good.
Well,
maybe she can just phone in.
I think that's what she's trying to do, is just phone in. Are you on?
Oh, this might be her. 1 second. Teresa, can you hear us? You just need to unmute your phone. Can you hear us now, Teresa?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, so unmute the computer, or I'm sorry, here, hang on. Can you still hear us on your phone? You can hear me on the phone? I don't hear you though. You're the 295-5468? Here, hang on.
If she hits maybe the pound sign or the star sign, it might connect with her phone.
Teresa, try talking again.
What? All I,
Needs to lower
Wow.
the volume on her computer.
There you go. Lower the volume on your computer.
And Teresa, if you're using speakerphone, turn off the speakerphone and actually hold the phone to your ear.
okay.
That'll work.
That's a lot better. So you can hear us now, Teresa?
Yeah, this worked a lot better last time. Well, this will drive you guys nuts.
We're not hearing the echo.
Oh,
So
As long as you don't put it on speakerphone, we don't hear the echo.
okay.
All right, so it sounds like we're ready to go. So Teresa, what we've been doing is we got through the first 4 items on the agenda. We're now on the first item of business. That is a discussion and possible reaction regarding the staffing shortages under old business. So we were just about to turn it over to Chief Rhodes. I'd forwarded out the email to everybody on the commission regarding the crisis that we just faced this past week. So I think that's going to be explained a little bit as far as the staffing shortages go, and I'll let the chief take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As everybody knows, I did sent an email to Chairman Jennings talking about the staffing shortages that were the COVID really exacerbated over the past several weeks. I'm happy to report that folks in quarantine, et cetera, are out of that now, so we're looking much better. The consideration was that if it got really bad, then we would assign Janesville personnel up there to fill in if we needed to, just to maintain an ambulance to the best we could. But I just also want to share with you that we are having difficulties on weekends for folks signing up for shifts. And it keeps Jenny very, very busy, probably all hours of the day and the night, trying to keep the shifts populated with folks. And like for the month of September, we had 23 vacancies for the 12-hour shifts. Ended up in September not covering one of those. And then initially in October, we had 62 vacancies for 12-hour shifts. We had several shifts that were still open during that, and that was definitely a COVID. COVID was a contributing factor, but the fact of the matter is that we are seeing Friday, Saturday, and Sundays shifts not being filled. I think it's important to bring it to the attention to the commission so that you don't hear it from anywhere else but myself. So I can answer any questions, and that's the end of my report. The chairman kind of summed it up.
Go ahead, Linda.
I was just wondering, now I thought that we just went through a new staffing model where we were going to have all this covered. So I guess because I think I'm not the only one that had that impression, but I'm also wondering, the people that are scheduled to work the weekends just don't want to work weekends? Or is it just that it's too much, will you work weekend?
So I don't have, nobody's told me that it's too much, I can't work the weekend. Yes, the staffing model is designed to make sure that we have shifts filled. One of the, like I've said before, our Achilles heel is, the part-time. I said it'd be difficult to sustain the ongoing staffing with part-time personnel. And I think that folks can either be busy on the weekend and not wanting to work a shift. It's still our approach to staffing is still, in a sense, voluntarily, like sign up for a shift if you want to. And I think we definitely need to transition to more of a managing the calendar from a perspective of let the fire department manage the openings and personnel, and that people commit to give us a set of dates, and we'll assign them to those positions. And we talked about that amongst the command staff very recently, and so we're trying to manage that. But I think it's, to be honest with you, people come and go and sign up when they want, and when they don't want to, they don't sign up. That's something that we didn't foresee, couldn't predict. And once again, the pool is a smaller pool, as you've been informed with our, paid on call and then and paid on premise. But this is going to be problematic until we decide how to really fix the staffing, which is really full-time people.
So do we actually have the, can this fire department with you as our part-time chief, if we need to have people from Janesville come and cover, is that something that we can do? Or do we need to go ahead with the joint consolidation in order to make sure that we have all of the coverage we need?
I think we can fill in with Janesville personnel, but I would have to bill the Milton Fire Department for the wages for those personnel. And so that would be an impact to the budget, but we certainly could do that. Assign folks up there, but the Milton Fire Department would be charged. We would bill City of Janesville would bill them for the coverage for personnel. If we were in a consolidated model, then that wouldn't be the problem. We would just fill the station.
I'm curious, has the Janesville stations experienced any challenges with similar things with COVID absences and whatnot?
We absolutely have. We've been impacted by COVID too, which is I think almost everybody's being impacted by COVID right now.
So some of this is explained by those kind of absences to some extent.
Yeah, the COVID. There's two issues. We're having weekends. People aren't really signing up for, so Jenny has to work really, really, really hard, all hours of the day and night to ask people to work. And then the COVID virus has definitely exacerbated that situation by decreasing the people that can work. I just thought it was important to notify the commission of that.
Well, I think it's important that we utilize the Janesville to fill in, and I'm certainly grateful that we can do that. But I don't see where we would have a choice, really. I mean, we're all in this together.
Yes, I would agree with Linda. I mean, we have 2 months to work it out before we hit the January budget. And hopefully between now and then, we can come up with a plan to work with for 2021. I'm sorry, this is driving me nuts. It's repeated 3 times in my ear, but to work out a plan and to work more jointly with Janesville. But in the interim, to have a backup plan through Janesville.
Hey, Teresa, why don't you try putting your phone like across the room once and see if your computer audio is working, because you're unmuted on our end anyway. I wonder if you would still be able to hear us.
I can.
Can you hear us now?
I can't hear anything.
Oh, you can't hear. We could hear you through your
I put it down
though.
by my knees and I can't hear anything.
Oh, that's a bummer.
No, I don't understand why there's an echo because your phone's muted. So the only input should be through the computer.
Yeah, I don't know. Just must be my pleasant voice. It just starts to.
There you go.
The one time I had to use my phone, I just had to eliminate the audio from my computer altogether. And I just had to hold the phone to my ear the whole meeting, which was not fun, but that's what it took to get rid of all the echoes.
Well, in regards to the current topic with the staffing shortages, is there anyone else that'd like to talk about this item?
Do we know maybe what this might cost? Like a rough estimate of how much it would affect our budget? I mean, is our payroll that much different?
Yes, ma'am, it is significantly different. It would probably cost the staff at a minimum two Janesville personnel assigned to the station it would be in overtime. They would be paid overtime, and it's approximately $1,100 per person for a 24-hour shift. Give or depending on the rank and pay grade, give or take, $50 to $100 from that value.
I guess, Chief, this question's for you as well then. Is there a more advantageous route of hiring another full-time personnel for less money? That's what it sounds like to me. It would be cheaper in the long run, well, even in the interim, to hire those full-time personnel rather than move them from Janesville, and it would still cost less.
Well, I just want to remind everybody, this is a last case, this is a contingency plan. That if we can't staff it with Milton personnel, and there would be like COVID really came in and really impacted us really bad, this would be a last ditch effort to make sure we have the staff. And so I don't see this happening a tremendous amount of time unless, I've read COVID's going to continue to peak for the next 30 to 60 days. We certainly could, I certainly would support hiring additional full-time people. But I don't know if we have the budget to do that.
Right, at this time.
Right. I mean, to me, this would just be the interim,
Yeah.
not only when necessary.
Right. It would be a must-have, right? It's like can't staff the equipment. We have to get an ambulance in service. It would be a must-have.
So this question is for Dan then, because this would be an extra expense to the fire department. Is that something that we can get some COVID relief from?
There's no dollars right now for that, other than the routes to recovery, and both the city and town have tapped out that funding source. And when we built the proposed budget that we brought forth last month, we did not include any additional full-time people. As we discussed, we included increasing the paid on-premise pay and that sort of thing. So we didn't account for additional health insurance and things of that nature.
So I think the next question is the $15 an hour wage going to be sufficient enough to stabilize, again, the department? Or are we better off looking at another alternative model? I know we've always been talking about the $15 minimum, but is it truly going to make a difference in getting people in the station? If it's only going to fill one shift, that's still one shift. But is it truly going to temporarily solve the problem for the next 6 months to however long it takes to create a stable solution?
Are you talking about the 2021 budget?
Yes, I am.
So I'm hopeful, to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, I'm hopeful it will, that it will meet the market as far as part-time personnel coming to the fire station. I can't guarantee it. And once again, it's not it's a workaround to get to the full-time employees that are truly vested into the organization. So we are very hopeful that the $15 an hour will contribute to that and be an incentive for folks to sign up on their weekend shifts or the shifts that are there.
Mhm.
I mean, we absolutely need it for part-time personnel. I'm just wondering if it's going to take care of the shortages we're seeing on the weekends, or if it's still going to remain an issue. And I guess that it's hard to say at this point, you know, if we're going to have more people be willing to work a shift for $15 an hour versus 10, or if it's more so the fact that we just have fewer people available to work shifts versus the financial incentive to work the shift. That's my concern.
Yeah, and so, you know, we hope it is. It certainly makes sense if we meet the market from a wage perspective. And just to let you know too, you know, we are constantly recruiting. You know, we got 4 new recruits right now. So we're trying to add to those numbers as much as we can, but we got to have certified firefighters. We got to have EMS certifications. It's just hard to find those folks that are willing to do that. But we keep beating the bushes, and hopefully we can keep working that, and then the $15 an hour will significantly help our situation. We're hopeful, but I can't guarantee it.
Well, the $15 an hour is, I mean, I don't think that we can now and say we're not going to do the $15 an hour. I think that that's actually what we need to continue to do. But I'm actually thinking that we need to move a little more faster with what we're trying to do with Janesville, because I just feel like we had problems before the virus. Now we have problems with the virus.
Linda, we can't go any faster. Short of a referendum, there's not the money for this.
Oh, no. I'm not talking about the $15 an hour we incorporated in our 2021 budget with as long as our townships are going to stay with us. I'm talking about the consolidation with Janesville so that everybody has got coverage and everybody is taken care of. I just feel like this, to me, makes me feel like we need to get moving with this. And so, you know, my suggestion is our attorney needs to go to that next meeting, and we need to really sit down and start putting some stuff on paper here.
Linda, we do have some discussion coming up here in one of the line items. We can talk more about this, but information has been developing on that, so we'll talk about that tonight as well. But as far as the staffing shortages go, does anybody else have discussion points they'd like to continue on this topic for? Okay, we'll move on to our next item of business, discussion and possible action regarding an update from the meeting with City of Janesville consolidation. Do you want to take that one, Brian?
Well, we got a couple of contacts just recently from the City of Janesville. The chief was intimately involved with both of those contacts and information. I just have been able to digest some of this stuff in the past couple days only, but the chief, since he prepared them, may better speak to this, and I can chime in and respond to that.
Brian, are you referring to the documents that I sent you and the mayor?
Yes.
Okay. So the documents is an updated addendum to the current memorandum of understanding that we enjoy right now between the three agencies. And so basically it really provides clarity on the roles and responsibilities as the fire chief, and also to functionally merge the two agencies, continue to do that. When I talk about functional merger, I want to be clear that we still retain the identities of both organizations, and the governance does not change. What we're really doing is just the functional aspects of the particular sections of the fire department that we all have a duplicate in resource in, and or a lack of resource in that. I think, so let me back up. So the memorandum, updated memorandum, according to the meetings that I had with, I know Brian and the mayor and Mark Freitag, that was the route to update the memorandum, and then the recommendation was to a short-term recommendation till we get to a referendum, which my understanding is going to be April of 2022, would be to functionally merge. That would be my recommendation, to functionally merge the organizations to strengthen any weaknesses and shore each other up, what that may be. And so, you know, we're definitely open to that from Janesville perspective. I also did have a staff meeting today with the command staff, and they're open to it. And I believe they think that we have to do something to bridge this gap until we can go for a referendum. And I would absolutely agree with that. So those are the documents that I've sent Brian and the mayor based on our conversation of the subcommittee looking at this and diving into what that looks like. Brian, did I cover it?
Yeah, and I just had a couple of questions while I was trying to digest the language. And I know that this is a draft model and a stab at trying to, you know, get there with language. But just to clarify a couple of things, in the full functional merger, who would be the employer of the staff, the firefighters, the EMS that are in this Milton station? Who would be the employer?
So that's a good question. So as I said, remember, we're keeping the identities of both organizations and the governance, which also means the budgets will have to come from two separate budgets. So the current employees with Milton would be current employees in Milton, and the current employees at Janesville would be current employees. What we're doing is just pulling the functions together and creating a synergy between the two. But the current personnel would remain currently assigned to each municipality or township or the fire department of both agencies.
And then the next question I have is, who would the equipment, capital equipment, who would own that in a full merger?
So the equipment would still stay the same. Janesville owns their equipment, Milton owns their equipment, but it is used to respond to emergencies across all departments or all the entire agency or the system per se. And we do that now. But, you know, for instance, we're really trying to work right now with Beloit and build a reserve apparatus fleet. And there may be a point to where we don't need all the reserve apparatus we have now. So it would just be able to give us the operational control to be able to make those wise decisions and try to create those economies of scale and create a better, more efficient operation across both organizations.
That leads to my next question. Could you please clarify what a reserve fleet is? And you talk about investing in a reserve fleet.
So reserve fleet is when your frontline engine is out of service for mechanical reasons or whatever, you have a backup engine to put right back in service so you can maintain that first out response, right? And so for instance, if we all did a reserve fleet memorandum between City of Beloit, Town of Beloit, City of Janesville, and Milton Fire, then each organization theoretically would only have to contribute. We decided that we need 4 backup ambulances for everybody. And that means each organization would have to keep a backup ambulance, but it could be used anywhere. And then each agency or one agency would have to keep a backup tender, but not necessarily a backup engine. And then the other agencies would provide an engine. So we're talking about needing 3 engines for ambulances because we do a lot of EMS calls. And then we would have a backup tender. So for instance, for example, theoretically, Milton would only really be responsible to provide the tender into the mix of a reserve fleet. And then we would all agree to share maintenance on those items versus one department has to share maintenance on everything. So we create an economy of scale here by pulling everybody together and working together. But you still retain the ownership of the vehicle.
So I'm trying to understand the dire need for reserve fleet. Does the city of Janesville on its own have a reserve concept? Does it feel like it has equipment it can share amongst its own stations today?
Yeah, we've always had reserve apparatus in the city of Janesville. We have to have a reserve apparatus.
And so, as you know, and consultants have told us in our past, there's an opinion that we have more equipment than we should have in the first place. We have 2 ambulances. We have, is it 3 engines?
Two engines.
Well, the ladder is an engine as well.
Oh, yeah, it's Quint. Yeah, it's got a pump and a tank.
So I understand the value of reserve equipment and everything you explained about it. I'm interested in learning where we are from a Milton standpoint in this reserve concept of need. If we maintain the amount of fleet vehicles we have now, it seems as though we've got reserve stuff in hand already. Not to say that that wouldn't be still fair in a broader picture, in a consolidation, but how do you feel about our amount of equipment and availability? Do you think that 2 ambulances not addressing reserve in any way whatsoever? Do you think 3 engines is not addressing reserve in any way whatsoever?
No, I think it is. I think you have too much reserve apparatus.
So we may, if it's thought out further, we may already be considered a partner in reserve. I know there's other things to look at besides just ambulances and engines, but that was a question that came to my mind.
Yeah, so Brian, let's say that we decided to do this, and we said, okay, all right, do we really need the second tender? And the answer is no, we don't. So we could sell that second tender, and we could reinvest that money back into the budget for the Milton Fire Department, and that would be, I think, an ideal situation if we would decrease our reserve fleet. But once again, then we would be relying on the backup fleet to be able to fill the void in case the frontline tender went down or was broken, and then we would call and ask for that truck, and we would bring it into the station.
That seems very logical to me. On the other hand, if we agreed to maintain the size of fleet we had, would that be potentially considered as part of our investment in reserve fleet?
Yeah, I guess it could. I think, just preliminary talks with Chief Bees at Beloit and talking, I think at a minimum, if we went to a shared reserve fleet, we would maintain an ambulance and a tender. And then we would keep our brush truck, we would keep our boats, our other vehicles, battalion vehicles, stuff like that. But you could technically then surplus the remaining fleet out. But until we really get serious and get to that point, we would have to really do a deep dive with all agencies involved to make sure that this would be the direction we would go. But that's
so on the other side of this discussion, for those listening, this reserve fleet concept, if it came time in a scheduled replacement that it was time to do one of our engines or one of our ambulances, that the decision could be made at that time to not replace that piece of equipment, but somehow commit to this being in this reserve fleet and depending on it to resolve that, just like the chief has proposed.
Right. As we move forward, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a big center. I mean, we're taking advantage of our relationships across the county to come together to share costs, right? Because we don't need a huge reserve fleet every day. What we need is on occasion a backup ambulance or a backup tender or a backup engine. And if we all need that. So if we all contribute 2 pieces of apparatus to that reserve fleet, then that's our commitment to 2 pieces of apparatus, but we have access to, you know, a total of 7 pieces or 8 pieces of apparatus that, you know, if we needed it, we could use it. And we would share the maintenance cost too, which is another big opportunity, because we all use the same vendor for the most part to work on our equipment. Is there an opportunity to internalize that mechanic service to save a lot of money? So this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, thanks for explaining a couple of questions that I came across trying to digest what you had started to propose in these documents. And I'm not sure if the mayor has shared these documents with city staff or not. I forwarded these documents to our town attorney just to get another set of eyes on it that would give me feedback. So I have a meeting tomorrow morning with our town attorney for him to give me his impression of how did he read this. I'm not asking him to rewrite anything or critique anything other than let me know what his eyes see in the documents so that I'm better informed.
Right. And Brian, in the email, I said that, like, hey, this is our first draft. You know, we could work this out to where it's comfortable for all parties involved.
Absolutely. And that's how I took it. And that's how I explained it to our attorney as well. Okay. That this is definitely a first draft. I don't think that this is, you know, the final word in any means whatsoever. I think at the very least, there might need to be some language tweaks, maybe not any physical tweaks at all, potentially, but a couple of things that did come to my mind were there's, Chief, you talked about fire districts and our fire department board. So we're not a fire district. There's a fire territory or a footprint recover, but some people might be confused by the term fire district.
Yeah, we would delete that. That's my fault there, because I think I'm still trying to learn in Wisconsin.
And
language fire.
yes. And then to make one other thing clear to me as I'm reading these documents, and I understand fully the need for a chief to be able to manage all of its resources as one policy. I totally understand that completely. But the, trying to find my question here. Excuse me, I made a couple of notes. And I think you've already answered this, or I think I understand that. So the question would be, would Milton be obligated for unbudgeted operating costs and capital equipment that the chief in this merger concept have full authority over? In other words, you would be required, and I think you have already said this, to still act within appropriated budgets, including the capital side.
Yes, sir.
So I think I got a lot of the questions and clarifications that I came to my mind when I was sifting through these, and I think the second document you sent helps a lot too with describing the functional merger more.
And let me just clarify this too. So still two separate identities, 2 separate governance structures, 2 separate budgets. And I would never use somebody else's budget for the other organization, right? So I would keep that clean. I think it'd be really important to do that. But that's not for resources. We could ebb and flow resources to meet the needs of both organizations.
And you make it very clear that this is an interim plan to evolve into the long-term goal, the 5 year down the road type of thing. You make that very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, the document that was shared with me, it sounds like through this discussion there was 2 documents. I've only seen one, and that was the Milton JFD functional merger. So without seeing the other document, I don't have a lot of comments on, other than, you know, the functional merger document made it at least pretty clear to me when I read it that this is a kind of an interim step. No one loses their identity. There's no change of ownership. There's no change of employment. It's really just a matter of consolidating kind of the administrative pieces of it. So the questions about reserve fleets and things like that aren't even really brought up in the document that I've seen. So I don't have any comments on that. But it all made a lot of sense to me. And you know, the chief has identified some areas where there could potentially be cost savings to our entity, which is obviously important as well. So I think the JFD and MFD functional merger document is something that we should, in my opinion, act on sooner rather than later.
So Al, a couple days prior to that document, the functional merger document, which I received yesterday, a couple days prior to that, the chief prepared a draft addendum to the intergovernmental agreement, the MOU.
Okay. Yeah, I have not seen that.
That was shared with the mayor and I, just like this last document was.
Okay.
The documents go very well together. Neither document stands out from the other very much. There are a lot different language and approaches, but they talk very much the same way about the functional operations.
Sure. Okay.
So I take it, Linda, Teresa, and Bill, you've not seen these documents yet from the city? The one
No.
document, the functional merger?
Can you email what you have to us so that we can just check it out?
Yeah, I'll have it sounds like both documents went to Anissa and I only saw one. So I'll have, and she had to step away from this meeting, so she's not hearing this conversation. So I'll email her and have her send both those documents in one email to everyone.
Yeah, I shared them with my town board when I forwarded them to our town attorney.
I think that this sounds great. So I guess the question is, can we do a timeline and say next meeting we all have the information, and then at the meeting after that have our attorney and Anissa and Brian pursue that discussion? I feel like we just need to get moving on this.
So I would propose a couple of things, or one of a couple of things, to move forward with some of this language and maybe final drafts. Our attorney has already said, well, should I eventually be communicating with the fire department's attorney? The attorneys talking to each other. He asked if he should be talking to the chief, since the chief drafted these preliminary drafts. And I told him I didn't know what the right answer was for that. I assume it may be the fire department's attorney. And that's in the interest of moving forward with final language, tweaking the language.
Well, I think that we should take it to our fire department attorney. Maybe we could send her a draft copy and see if she has any language suggestions?
Well, I certainly think we should forward both of these documents to our attorney representing the fire department, for sure. It's just that then who should that attorney be in communication with to talk about any dotting i's and crossing t's in it, so that we can, as soon as possible, come up with final drafts for potential consideration.
Well, I guess I would think that that would be you and Anissa, because you are the ones who, well, and Chief Rhodes, because you're the ones that came up with it.
Well, quite frankly, I think the documents read fairly well. I think that they just need some, like I said, dotted i's and crossed t's, not functionally, and some of the critical detail I'm not as concerned about in these documents, but I don't think they're ready in the final form. Things like I brought up where there's discussion of a fire district and clarifying that we stay within established and approved budgets. Things like that aren't necessarily part of the documents today, that very simply could be a stroke of a pen would resolve that.
Yes, sir, Brian. We could absolutely do that. I would look forward to talking to, either attorney, any attorney, and like I said, this was our first draft, and my marching orders from the committee that met was to draft you guys by the end of October, so we could look at this and massage it as we move towards the end of the year. So I think we're on track for that, and I certainly would like to continue on with that.
So can we have it on the next agenda to, for possible action?
Yep, that was the goal, that once you have the documents in front of you to review, along with sending them to the respective attorneys to ensure that it's been vetted through the council, that we would have a more solidified and formal document that's been kind of ready for our viewing point, where if action was going to be taken on it, it could be.
Well, the town of Milton would be willing for our attorney to have a small amount of input. I'm not expecting any final input on anything, actually, but if our attorney can use their legal jargon to express what he thinks a couple of semantics could be, maybe to the fire department's attorney, and then step back. The town would pay for our input in that respect to the fire department's attorney, and literally step back after that point.
Well, I think we would have to decide the order. I mean, do we want our fire department attorney before we take it to our own bodies, or vice versa?
Well, I think absolutely that really defines why we even have an attorney for the fire department. This is a critical intergovernmental agreement document. This is probably, from a document standpoint, this is probably the most important document we own as a fire department.
Yes.
Yeah.
So perhaps we could discuss that next time we meet, to decide which step we want to take first.
After we've all seen the documents.
Correct.
So I understand that our fire department attorney will be contacted and share these documents and asked to communicate with the chief, maybe the city of Janesville administrator as well, because they're the ones that brought this document to us, with maybe some small contact with the town attorney for initial input. So I understand that the fire department's attorney will be contacted to expect that. I'll make a motion that the fire department's attorney does get involved with reviewing this document.
Second.
Motion has been properly moved and seconded to have the fire department's attorney review the document that was submitted entitled, hold on, I got the actual verbiage here.
Functional merger documents
Yes,
and,
thank you. Yep.
and MOU addendum draft, which is technically an intergovernment agreement, but that's how it would be treated.
And you're talking about the JFD, MFD functional merger document?
That's one of the two. The
Okay.
other one is titled Addendum Number 1, which is a draft addendum to the current MOU.
Okay.
And I want to stress that that's an intergovernment agreement. To even point out, I'm sorry, you've got a motion on the floor.
I have a question regarding your motion.
Go ahead, Teresa.
You're asking to have the attorney look at it before you bring it to us or after with any suggestions we may have?
Before, because the purpose or the intent would be to bring what's anticipated to be the final draft. Otherwise, we're talking about drafts indefinitely. So if we think the attorneys can better help prepare an appropriate final draft that benefits all parties.
My intent, though, is to have the current draft at least sent out to everybody. And I think Al was talking about getting the documents to the city council members so that they have that document to review first, and then we'll view the final product and whatever changes are made to it once the fire department attorney reviews it as well. And any other respective conversations that were or collaboratively had between the attorney and the fire chief, for example, were vetted as well.
Yeah,
I don't mean,
I've already sent an email to Anissa asking her to send those documents, and I think Ernie is kind of already gonna beat her to the punch. So as soon as I have them, I'll forward them to the city council members as well. Just because because Anissa had to leave. She's not here. She's not hearing this conversation. I don't know when she'll even see my email. So once I have them, I'll forward them out. So you'll have copies of them in advance of that. So.
And then I
so
guess
to amend that, to do that once we have final drafts. You're talking about, Brian.
To do what?
To specify that we want to have the attorney review them once we have a final draft?
No, I'm anticipating the attorney to create the final draft, to recommend to the commission that this seems like an appropriate final draft to consider.
But once we have it reviewed by the commission and by the city council and the town board.
Yeah, the final approval couldn't be made by the fire commission because it's an intergovernmental agreement. So that would have to go to the municipal bodies because the MOU is an intergovernmental agreement. But the commission can recommend, once it thinks it has its final draft, it could recommend to the municipalities to approve it or not approve it.
Okay, I just want to clarify that you're asking for this done after it's gone through all these bodies.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it's going to get stuck in review process too much if we don't get somebody to kind of critique the language right now and feel like that there's been knowledgeable input on it.
Well, right. I just didn't want to pay to, have our attorney look at it, your attorney look at it, and then have the fire commission attorney look at it. And if we were going to then become, whoops, they made a change here. Now we need to have our attorney look at it again. So just as long as we all follow the same procedure.
The alternative is we could ask the commission members to digest this, talk about it at the next meeting, get input, digest it for another month, come back with another draft, digest it for another month. My anticipation is that by jumping on this with legalese, we can come up with better drafts faster. That's my intention.
I don't understand. I guess I thought that your motion was to have the attorney draft it for us.
Yes.
And then we,
Whoa, wait a minute.
and then we pass it through the chains, correct?
That was my suggestion. That was my motion. If you don't feel that that speeds up the review process and looking at versions of this, then maybe there's a different way to do it.
Well, you know, I just got my copy. I don't know about anybody else, but how about if we just, I mean, I want to continue with the motion for the attorney to write this up, but my suggestion is that if anybody, after reading through this, has any suggestions, that they also send those to Chief Rhodes. Is that okay, Ernie, or is it better?
Yeah, or you could send them to Brian too, or I'll take them. I like the idea of having, you know, an attorney meet with or talk to me or whatever to clean up the verbiage. I like that. I think we can get that done fairly soon. If the board would review this and look at it and get those either emails to me or to Brian, and then we can get a clean draft, and then you guys can run it through your processes. I think it would happen sooner. I would hate to drag our feet on this and wait a month and wait another month and wait another month and wait another month. I think, you know, we need to create some clarity and get it moving. So I think Brian's approach is spot on, but if you want to get your information to Brian, and Brian, excuse me, I'm not speaking for you, just a suggestion to fix the draft, because I don't think it's going to be a lot to fix.
So I guess one of my concerns here is the processes that we have. So the information that we received came through our municipal channels, and we're trying to make a decision going forward in a commission level. I just am asking procedurally, is that the proper channel to go through if this information was referred to each municipality to take care of? I don't mind the fire commission attorney being involved. I think that's a good idea. But my biggest question is, does it lie with this body, or does it still need to be out with the municipalities to continue developing the language?
Well, it ultimately has to go to the municipalities.
Well, it started there, is what I'm saying.
I don't want to run into that situation where we're going through and changing descriptions and verbiage and this and that. I feel like that's why attorneys do what they do.
Go ahead.
Bill has a question.
Yep, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, what I see here is what we want is something that is close to final to review at our next meeting. And, you know, if Brian wants to run that by the town attorney, that's fine as an action of the town of Milton. And if the city of Milton wanted to do that, that's fine. But I think the key person here really is the fire commission's attorney in getting it into legalese, getting it into a final form so that at our next commission meeting, the commission can then forward that to the municipalities with our stamp of approval or our recommendation for action on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so this is why this is a perfect example of why we decided to have a dedicated attorney represent the fire department that the fire commission can go to. This is clearly, in my mind, why we have one.
Yeah.
So
can we vote on the motion then? Does everybody understand? or
So Jenny, can you please reiterate what you have for the motion currently to make sure that it's clear as mud?
Yeah, so from Brian, I have to send forward to the fire department attorney for review of the documents, the merger document and the MOU draft number 1. So to create a final draft to recommend to municipalities at the November meeting.
Okay.
Linda added in the suggestions sent to Chief Rhodes and Brian. So I just wanted to know if Brian wanted that in his motion.
well, to send any suggestions now that we all have the information? I think we should go ahead and add that in.
Brian,
Brian,
you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like any of those comments in writing in some form so that I could literally forward them to the town attorney or whatever channel is necessary to forward them to the attorneys.
We can email them to you.
Yeah, because any input or suggestions or questions you might have, I'm okay with me being the funnel for that, but I don't think that I'm going to be the one responding to that input.
No, you
I
don't.
would forward that input.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion on it?
I'll only add that if that's what I'm going to wind up doing is having anything to forward to the attorney, at that point I would start copying, CCing our official record keeper, Jenny, on those. So that everybody knows that information got forwarded.
Yep. Good thinking.
Jenny has not been included so far in this stuff, but it's probably time for her to have those records.
Okay, well, we'll proceed to voting on the motions. All those in favor of having the information regarding the intergovernmental agreement addendum and the MOU verified and reviewed by our fire commission attorney, and for any comments to be forwarded to Brian in the interim to forward to the attorney, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right. Barring there's no other conversation regarding this discussion topic, we'll move on to the next topic. Discussion and possible action regarding an update on township contracts. So we did have, each municipality has responded to me regarding some sort of, hey, yes, we received the information. We either are having a meeting about that information or we're going through proper channels to see if it is possible to attain funding for the additional expenses in this year's contracts for 2021. So we are still waiting for some of that information to be facilitated, but at this time, there has been no direct line of communication stating they are actively seeking other contracts from other service providers. There's been discussion about possibly reviewing that with let's say if a township is already being serviced by another service provider, reviewing their costs associated with the other providers, but nothing directly in saying, no, we no longer want to carry Milton service. So what we'll do is we'll continue that conversation dialogue as more information comes through from each municipality. I'll let you know. At this time, there's not a ton of other discussion. There was one topic from the town of Harmony. They voted on the motion and are going to proceed with taking it for review with their town electors. So however that transpires, that's going down its proper chains, and likewise the other municipalities are kind of following suit. I know Johnstown had a meeting the other night about it, and Brian was able to attend and talk about the fire commission's objectives, the reason why the contracts were set as they are, and where we're going for the future of the department. Brian, did you have an update on how that meeting went? I haven't had it.
Yes, I was asked to attend. We had a fairly lengthy conversation, but it pretty much totally evolved around why do we need more money? And I said it's really operating expenses at this point. So they had a lot of good questions. They wanted to know about the future of capital expenditures. And I said, well, that hasn't been thoroughly investigated, whether we want to change that model or not. I said, any input that they might have on if they have a desire to be invested in capital expenditures. I said that would be a future conversation that we haven't explored much yet. I said this is all about operating expenses. So they were looking for that clarification. And we really talked about full-time staffing and the why we were being impacted the way we were or felt we were for operating expenses. They did have one question about, well, what if we don't decide soon enough or do something? I said, I really only have one response to that. I believe your contract is through December 31st this year. I really don't have any other answers for you on that. But it went fairly well. It's always hard to swallow, these kind of numbers. They wanted to know why it was such an impact so fast. And I said, well, we've just recently conceded that our current staffing model doesn't seem to work. We've been challenged with it for many, many years, but we've decided that we're going to do something about it now. I said, yeah, we've been talking about it for years. We've only been talking about this model for weeks or a couple months. They thought maybe we've been talking about this kind of a model intimately for a couple of years, and I don't believe that's the case. We certainly haven't been talking these kind of numbers for many, many months at all. No. But they were under the impression that we might have been. I hope I didn't mislead them on that part. I don't think I did. But they received it very well. And when the meeting was over, they all thanked me for the good discussion. So they felt that was a valuable discussion, even though we didn't resolve anything for them. There was nothing, I was not left with anything that said, well, they are going to try to figure this out financially. They're going to put a plan in place. They basically are, I guess, digesting it at Johnstown.
Mm-hmm. And how was your conversation with Harmony, John?
It went pretty much a little bit more streamlined than Brian's conversation with Johnstown. They had it discussed on their past meeting, which I believe was during last week, Monday, or it was just very recently over the past couple of weeks. And in their discussion, they had talked about potentially going to increasing their levy this November. So they had to set up their meetings and set up their timeline for that if they were going to increase their levy. And so that information had been discussed at that meeting. And one other thing that had come up was the significant increase in the contract equating to, they asked about representation, if they were going to be paying more in the department that they would, they inquired about having representation on the commission as a form of appointed official. So that I didn't have a lot to give them. I said that that's conversation that the commission could have if that came to that. But other than that, it was not much different than last month, other than they're moving down their proper channels to try to move forward with the contract as presented. Otherwise, no other information had been said as they're going to be shopping elsewhere or going to pursue contracts with another service provider. Nothing like that has been brought to my attention at this time.
Johnstown had a similar question about representation, but it was really more about the ability to be able to provide input, and not necessarily a vote, unless it evolved around ownership, capital ownership. But when it comes to operating expenses at a higher level, they just felt like they wanted to be more able to communicate with us. And they said, you're absolutely invited to any commission meeting whatsoever. They're public meetings, and absolutely yes.
Absolutely.
I said, but there's, like any contracts, there's always an opt-out clause of some sort. If you're not satisfied with the services or where it's leading to financially, the one option is an opt-out in the long-term future. So,
Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what they all decide.
And everyone's kind of at that point where they're trying to do their budgets and schedule this information in their budgets and see what money is available, if there is money available. Otherwise, they have to go further increase in their levy. And that may or may not pass. I mean, I don't know the preliminary information on each respective contract in town, but I'm sure that there's conversations being had at this point that, you know, some people would be concerned about an increase in the levy. But at the same point, what it's for, I think that outweighs that increase quite a bit. When explaining the fire department staff being paid, part-time staff being paid $10 an hour, that's not fair. It's not reasonable. It's not sustainable. And every time that I brought that up, everybody agreed with me. Each of the towns said, "You're right. That's not a fair wage to pay firefighters. $15 an hour is the least we could pay them, you know, considering the circumstances." And from what I understand, they were all in agreement that we understand what the money is going for at this point. Now we just need to figure out if we can afford it. Kind of like the situation we've been in for quite a while. So we'll see where that goes. I think we'll know quite a bit more in November, simply because November we'll have budgets already approved and moving into the final town elector meetings. So since the meeting is going to be a little later in the month in November, maybe we'll have a couple of those contracted towns already feedback and financials decided at that point. So anything else on the township contracts or questions? All right, we'll move on to our next item of business, which is discussion and possible action regarding the 2021 budget. I left this on here for some of the reasons we had talked above about some of the financial considerations. 2020 is going to experience some increased costs, whether or not they be large costs or relatively small, about being over the budget that we had anticipated having for wages. Just be aware that if there is a time like we're experiencing the past week and a week and a half, as Chief Rhodes has said, with staffing shortages, if we need to utilize any additional staff from the Janesville Fire Department, that those additional wages and expenses will be in 2020's budget, which will not have been budgeted for. So it just needs to be aware that those additional costs will be pretty substantial, even though it's only short term, because the cost is significantly more for the wages in Janesville. So just as a notation on that for 2021, if this carries into 2021, the COVID-19 and the experiences that we're having with having positive cases, we're again going to have to figure out if our budget is going to be sufficient for 2021, if the wages are going to go up. So just again, we have a lot of expenses coming through the department over the next 2 years, between the transition plans, between the referendums, potential referendums, or the models that are in front of us. So we just need to be prepared for that 2021 budget, maybe needing to be amended if we do feel the need that we have to move forward with a plan and there's going to be additional costs incurred immediately as a result in the transition time before we even go to referendum or increase levies. So just as a high point there, that's why I wanted to leave that on the budget line item, I should say. So.
I'd like to get one clarification so that everybody's on the same page here. The proposed budget for 2021 doesn't include any new equipment as far as vehicles.
Correct.
There's some capital stuff in there, maybe with station uniforms and whatnot, I believe. But as far as the capital end of it, where there's vehicles, that's not in part of the budget we're looking at adopting or recommending to the municipalities.
Correct. You're right, Brian. And On top of that, I mean, there was some information preliminarily put out for an ambulance replacement, being about a $280,000 cost for ambulance replacement, plus or minus a few thousand. So if that is handled in 2021, it's definitely not part of the current budget, but additional expenses that may be required beyond our current operating budget with the status quo. I say the status quo is in operating the way we've been operating, but with the increase in wages to $15 an hour. If anything falls outside of that current model that we have, we need to be prepared to accommodate the additional expenses that might be coming as a result of those changes, whichever staffing model is decided upon going forward. So if that makes sense.
Where is the city of Milton in its budgeting process? Has it penciled anything into its budget and levy approach?
Yeah, what we've put in is the budget that was presented to the fire commission. So we have our allocation increasing roughly $25,000. So what was presented to the fire commission, and we had that conversation last night. Obviously, any changes with the contracted townships that may jump out or change their boundaries or any of those variables obviously affects that number and makes that number increase. So, but what we have in there is the increase of $25,000, which is, I assume, what the town has as well.
Yeah, the town has also done the same thing in its budget process, and we're using the higher of the two options, which is roughly a $5,000 increase on the proposed budget. So that's what we have put into the budget process and asked for levy on. So we've used the higher of the two costs in the two options proposed.
So as we travel into 2021, just keeping in mind that we kind of have that small blanket between the town and the city to help cover if there are any discrepancies in obtaining additional funding from either the contracted towns or simply just having more money in wages simply because we have additional shifts that we have to hire on that were not thought through the initial budget because of the unpredicted circumstances. So just be aware of that going forward, and that might be something we have to amend in 2021. I don't know what that looks like, but just so we're aware of that situation. So.
I think we're probably at a commission and its responsibility is it probably would be in order to recommend to the municipalities, the city and the town of Milton, to approve and authorize the total budget of $1,098,099. That would be in the form of a motion to recommend to the municipalities.
Brian, I thought we already did that at the last meeting. We recommended the budget to each municipality, correct?
I wasn't sure if we had or not. I'm sorry.
Yep, that's all right. Yep, we last meeting we did recommend to each municipality to proceed with the proposed budget, and we went with the equalized value approach, which that's what we approved for recommendation.
Okay.
But beyond that, since the numbers have not been finalized, we have not.
I know there was a lot of discussion. I didn't know if we got there.
Yep. It was a long conversation. So did anyone else have any more discussion on 2021 budget? All right, so we'll continue on then into new business. Discussion of possible action regarding union contracts of full-time personnel. So in this discussion item, I sent everybody the union contracts agreements that should have been on September 24th, I believe. I sent those out. So if you have those, feel free to pull them up. We do have a representative tonight with the Janesville Union, Fire Department Union, Mr. Jason Dascom. So if he has a moment here, he can kind of give an overview of those documents and answer any questions if you have any regarding the union contracts. Mr. Dascom?
Well, good evening. Thank you for inviting me. So this is pretty much a standard voluntary recognition of the three individuals, full-time individuals, as union members within Local 580, which in Janesville we cover about 90 individuals, and in Edgerton we cover about 5. The voluntary recognition is up to you guys. If you don't voluntarily recognize them, then we go through the labor regulations, and we have to set up a vote, and more than likely it's going to come out into the union's favor and those individuals' favors to be recognized as union members. And this is just to recognize them as union members. Then we go on to discuss contract and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm free to take any questions. I know that this is kind of a change for you guys. I'm here to answer all your questions and be very honest and upfront with you. So feel free, shoot them to me.
I guess I do have one question. If the recognition of recognizing the union as an entity for our full-time personnel, is that something that, like you said, you're already representing Edgerton and Janesville and Milton, so there's not one specific entity that you're representing anyone within a geographical location? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so what happens is Janesville is the home. We're the big local, and then Milton would be an affiliate. They would just kind of be tied to us because they're not big enough to be their own local. So that that's how smaller departments are able to actually do it. So there's many departments up into the Dane County area that are affiliates of Madison Fire. And of course, then we've got Edgerton, like I said, that we've been with them for 4 years now, and we just did a renewal of the contract. So that's what I'm kind of looking at, is Edgerton being kind of the role model of looking at similar contracts between the two, because you guys are two very similar sized departments with similar run volume. So
I have a question. What might there be the implications of union contracts physically with our department? So we're looking at, in the next few years, several transitions, both from a staffing perspective and physical station at some point. It seems inevitable, of course. But in the meantime, what are the implications of how we might be influenced short term by union contract physically?
So the union contract is there for wages, benefits, and working conditions. We kind of already have a plan for your benefits to mirror the city of Milton's kind of benefits. We've already got similar pay as Edgerton, which is a good thing. And working conditions is a ongoing thing, but I've been talking with Chief Rhodes and Chris Lucas, and they seem like they're on a pretty good pace and a good plan for that. So that's what we're concerned about. And if you guys end up growing, great. We're there to assist you in planning, growing, and making, whether it's the Milton Fire Department or whether it's eventually down the road consolidating with Janesville, a little bit easier.
So the working conditions is very open-ended, and because we do seem to all believe that we're transforming here in the next few years physically. I'm talking about brick and mortar and staffing models. So working conditions could be extremely open-ended. And I just want to make sure that we're not committing to something that's going to get us into a really big bind that we can't satisfy in the next 1 or 2 or 3 years until we've addressed brick and mortar.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the struggle that all small departments have, that you're seeing a problem with the volunteer service, the paid on call service, not getting enough personnel, and being kind of stuck in that area of not having the funds to exactly bring in more full-time people. So that's always a struggle with departments your size. But I think that the union, and I think Chief Rhodes and Chris Lucas can agree with me that I think we've worked well together and coming to compromises and discussions, and we just want to be part of the discussion and helping move departments forward and not backwards. And we don't want to stall them, the talks either.
So I guess I really am going to lean on the chiefs and other staff. Is there any foreseen considerations we should be aware of in accepting union contracts? Can we live up to them at this point, knowing that there's a transition coming down the road physically?
And I don't think it's going to be really problematic. I think I can tell you that I personally and the command staff at Janesville and Chief Lucas is part of that. We meet monthly on we call it LMA, Labor Management Alliance, and at the end of the day, we always have the same motive, and that's what's best for the fire department. And so I don't see it being an issue. I think we're smart. I think, we know there's a transition approaching, and I think you have to word the working conditions of such to where it doesn't prohibit you from completing today's mission, even though it may be adjusted a little bit in the next couple of years. And so I don't foresee that's a problem. We have very, very open and honest dialogue with Local 580. I don't ever see that changing. Based on all my experience of all the years in the fire service, that is the way to operate in that labor management environment together. And so I see us being very intelligent. I see us being smart. I think Jason is very sincere in saying that he wants to see forward progress. And I don't ever foresee him trying to stack the deck against anybody to stop that or to do something with a personal agenda in mind. So pretty common approach to unionizing a fire department. I'm very comfortable with it, and I would recommend that we would do that. And then, once we come to the contract, and it's obviously, myself and Jason sitting down and talking about the contractual language, if that's the desire of the commission. The commission may want to negotiate the contract, but from my many years of experience, if you put two leaders together, you can get a lot of things done a lot quicker and save a lot of money in attorney's fees.
So generally, when you start talking labor negotiations, people tend to focus on the dollars. And I just want to make sure that we're not physically up against some obstacles that we can't satisfy on working conditions that are unforeseen, at least for the time being.
Yeah, that's a concern because, obviously contracts have a financial component to it, in that we would have to, we can't sign a contract, nor I don't think Jason would want us to sign a contract where we couldn't uphold our financial agreement with the staff. And that's just not a good way to do business. So yeah, we'd have to be smart, but we'd be smart anyway to getting a very solid document. I think that the commission would be comfortable with too at the end of the day.
To be clear, what my point was, I really wasn't addressing the finances. I was addressing any unforeseen working conditions issues.
Yeah, so in all the years I've been in the fire service, I've not seen any unrealistic working conditions. An example would be, we're going to have lunch every day at noon to 1, right? And stuff like that. So it's those kind of working conditions that I think that we're looking at. Whereas if you don't have a set lunch hour, the fire chief can come in and go, or an officer go, hey, we're not doing lunch. We're going to work here, here, and here today, right? So I'm a fan of of contracts because it is the rule. It is the rules of the organization, and it's very transparent. So those type of working conditions I think that's the kind of working conditions you may be referring to or something, but those are what we're looking at. Jason, and you can chime in here if I miss something, but when is cutoff? So, we know sleep deprivation is a huge issue in the fire service. We know it leads to accidents. We know it can be a safety issue. And, we would put in the contract, when is the time to stop working for the day, right? And, stop training, stop inspection, stop maintenance, stuff like that. Is it 4 o'clock in the afternoon? And so those are the kind of working conditions I think that we're talking about. And Jason, speak up if I'm looking at this wrong. I think,
You're right on page.
okay.
Yeah,
So-
one example I had was sleeping quarters. We believe we're in a transition with that physically. We think we need a new station to get where we would prefer to be. We have sleeping quarters, but we're not where we prefer to be with those. And that's the type of working condition I was referring to.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now. So if there was a feeling that it was a substandard, a place to sleep, then we know that we're transitioning to a very modern facilities eventually. Yeah, I don't think that would be, an issue or in the working condition. I don't see a contract containing those type of things. Now, if it was really very problematic and very unsanitary and was really a place where you yourself wouldn't sleep, then we got a problem, right? So I don't think that'll be an issue. Jason, you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm from the old school of Station 1 Janesville, where it was an open dorm kind of mentality. So yeah, when we call working conditions, it's like the chief said, when we do inspections, when we do maintenance, when do we do lunch, when do we do pub ed, stuff like that. And just the physical building itself is, like the chief said, if we have a problem with it, we're going to come to you guys and say, would you guys actually sleep here? Would you actually want to eat here? And that's kind of the test of that kind of stuff.
And then
Hey, Bill, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think this is a logical step towards professional department. This is a request for voluntary recognition. And as was pointed out, if we refuse voluntary recognition, it's very likely that there would simply be a vote that would say that Local 580 is going to represent the firefighters. So I guess my point is, I think we should move toward the voluntary recognition, start off on the right foot as a step towards being that full-time professional department we've been talking about.
I would agree that we should look at the union contract. I think it's premature to approve it tonight. But I think we need to move forward with looking at
Brian, we're not asking for approval of a contract tonight. What we're recognizing Local 580 does not approve working conditions. I mean, that's a contract matter. It just is saying that the employees will be represented by Local 580 of firefighters.
That's correct, Bill. So essentially, we have two documents in front of us. The first one is recognizing that the department will recognize the union, the Local 580, as the union that our fire department staff utilize for collective bargaining agreements. The second item on the agenda or on the docket here is for recognizing the actual individual members that have volunteered to go and be a part of the local 580. So we have two different documents that would need approval. No contract stating what those conditions look like, what those guidelines are. That will come later once the recognition phase is done. So Brian, these have already been kind of in the channels. They're pretty solid. It's a pretty standard document for what I want to understand, Jason. Is this the same type of document that, let's say, Edgerton received as well, as kind of a general, policy? Because I know they're very similar to us.
Yes, all departments are given, departments that have just hired some full-time staff, and the full-time staff approaches the local for representation. So, yeah, this document is given to everybody that is starting a full-time department where full-time individuals want to be recognized as union members and join a union. And then it's up to each municipality or entity to voluntarily recognize them or make us jump through some more hoops to finally get recognized. But in the end, they end up getting recognized anyways. So voluntary is the easiest for both sides. And I think it's an easier transition. And like the chair said, this is just to recognize them. And then the next step would be to sit down and discuss draft of a contract. And the draft of the contract depends on how you guys feel. It could be the chief and I. It could be a couple of council members. It could be attorneys. And like the chief said, you get attorneys involved, it muddies the waters. I think that we have a good starting point with Edgerton's contract. And I think that we can hammer out a contract pretty quickly. And then that contract then gets brought to you individuals, and you get to vote on whether to accept that contract or deny it and go back to the bargaining table to change what you don't like. And then our members also have that ability also, but generally once a contract is kind of tentatively agreed on, it moves pretty fast through the chains, unless there's something pretty outrageous, like if the union pulls one over on the chief and wants a $10,000 pay increase per year or something like that, then we have problems, and I don't foresee those problems. So we've got a pretty good roadmap with Edgerton. We've got a lot of comparables through the state, which we look at, and I can't squeeze any more money out of you guys. I mean, the budget is the budget. So I like to work within it. We don't need to. We're not here to divide people. So we're here to work together and, like I said, make this department a better department for the future.
A question for the chair, John. John, you mentioned two documents. Do we have both of them documents?
Yes, they were both forwarded over in an email to everybody on the 24th. So the first document's voluntary recognition, and the second document was recognizing the individual. Oh, excuse me. I apologize. It was just a letter. A second document was just a letter explaining the recognition paperwork. I apologize. That was my misunderstanding. So yeah, it's just the one document. I apologize. So one document approving the members and the recognition of the organization. So
are you looking for a vote? Are you looking for a motion right now? Because I will make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding between the Milton Joint Fire Commission and Janesville Firefighters Local 580.
Is there a second on this motion?
Second.
Second.
Okay, it has been seconded by Bill to move forward and the memorandum of understanding between the Joint Fire Commission and the Local 580. Discussion? I do have one point I wanted to ask, and I think you kind of already touched on it, Jason, was that we're in a very fixed budget situation, you know, and that was my biggest concern is how does the bargaining work as far as exceeding that budget where, you know, we're already at a very difficult situation. Each municipality is kind of at that threshold where it's experiencing difficulties obtaining more revenue. So are we going to be concerned about exceeding budgets every year? Or like you said, I know you wanted to try to work within a budget, but does that mean expenses in the budget will be reallocated for certain things? Is it more of a priority versus other things? I guess is kind of a general point I wanted to bring up.
So as we all know, the kind of the cost, I mean, the actual pay is pretty, you can kind of figure that out. It's the benefits that kind of really throw wrenches into things. And, you know, every year you just don't know where the health insurance is going to go. I mean, that's the big thing. But we can kind of project out for wages and stuff. And, you know, like in Janesville, it's a bigger department. We always look at between 2 and 3% cost of living increases per year. With a smaller department like yours, Edgerton uses a different model to figure out wage increases for the year. But those are all decided on, and you guys always have that vote of no, we can't afford this, guys. We need to go back to the drawing board and figure this out. So that's your guys' responsibility to really look over that budget and make sure that we're within reason. You know, like I said, my role is wages, benefits, and working conditions. So a lot of the benefits have been taken away from us, meaning that we're not able to always bargain so much of the benefits. And, you know, we had to live underneath levy limits and shared revenue expenses. So I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to be shooting for the moon for wages and benefits and stuff. But, you know, I think sitting through this meeting that I've understood that you guys really want to pay your firefighters a good wage. And that's a good thing. That's a great starting point. And if we can continue with that model of we really like these guys, these individuals, and we really need to continue with this, then we're going to have a great working relationship, because I'm not going to be trying to go over your budget and making you guys increase taxes and really, you know, get you in hot water with your township or your city and your voters. So.
Well, I'd like to know if Dan
Go ahead, Brian.
or city administrator have any input on this at all?
I haven't seen the document, but I think like what Bill had alluded to and what Chief Rhodes alluded to earlier, you know, what's before you tonight is just recognizing these three individuals as a union under the 580. And as far as the wages and benefits, you know, as Jason stated, you know, he's willing to work within our parameters, and it would be my understanding that what we're currently paying those folks is probably fairly comparable. When we came up with those starting wages a year ago this time, we looked at some of the smaller departments. We looked at Janesville, and Chief Rhodes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that starting wage is right there and is comparable.
Yeah,
So there's probably not a ton of, you know, it's probably just how many years out do we want to go and what's that annual increase going to be?
All right, so the current motion on the floor, is there any discussion on it?
Could I just ask, just ballpark scenario, when we're talking about benefits, how much flexibility is there with insurance costs and so forth? I mean, does the commission have any help with that, or in terms of like these are options, or what does that look like? I don't have much experience with this.
Who are you talking to, Beth?
I think Jason would be, if we're looking, what I heard him say was that in terms of our wages, that, we're all in agreement that we're looking to do the best for our employees, and at the same time, that Local 580 would be able to work with us. But he did say that the benefits is where it gets the most sticky, and namely health insurance. And so I'm just trying to figure out what that might look like for us. I'm not in disagreement with any of this, trust me. I'm just trying to find out what, when it comes to this discussion, what does that look like for us?
So my understanding is that the three individuals that are full-time are on the City of Milton's insurance plan. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's from what I understood. So that's probably going to be kind of what we're going to follow. And we're not going to go above that necessarily. I mean, we can look at it. We can't really negotiate plan design. So that's what what Milton offers, and what you guys are willing to give them. That's the plan design. Where we can negotiate a little bit is like in the premiums. But generally, that's not really worth fighting over, really. Janesville comes in and, this is your insurance plan. We're only going to increase the benefit this much, and it's generally that's the end of the conversation. So in Janesville, again, it's we ask for a cost of living increase that matches CPI, but that's not necessarily what we get. And the city, a lot of time, the last couple of negotiations with the city, it's well, we're going to give you this, and it's usually right down the middle of the road, and we say okay, and then we spend a lot of time talking about other language inside the contract. So Janesville is a bigger city. It's got a very well seasoned contract. We've been a union now for over 80 years. This is an initial contract, so it's going to be pretty bare bones, and it's just to get the contract done and kind of move on, and then it's our opportunity then down the road to improve it more. So whether it's improving benefits or wages or the working conditions.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I think what Jason mentioned earlier was alluding to was we never know from year to year what insurance companies want to charge for the plan.
Well, and that's completely understood. I guess not having experience with this, I would agree. I just didn't know what that looked like for us.
All right, so any more discussion on our motion? And being an intergovernmental agreement, I believe that requires a roll call vote. Am I correct in that, Brian? All right, then I'll proceed with a roll call vote. Go ahead. I'll start with Brian. Brian, how do you vote?
Aye.
Beth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Linda? You're on mute still, but I got you.
I
Bill?
want to be clear, this is not an intergovernmental agreement.
That's what it's labeled, Brian.
Excuse
Then
me,
we
it is a
don't have the
memorandum of
authority.
understanding, which
And
is,
a point of order,
Oh,
then
correct.
we don't have the authority as a commission to adopt an intergovernmental agreement.
and this is actually a memorandum of understanding. I apologize. It's not an intergovernmental agreement. That's how it's labeled on here. And if it's a memorandum of understanding, it's between the Joint Fire Commission and the 580. So this should not require municipal approval prior to.
Just on my point of order, if it does allude to an intergovernmental agreement, we don't, as a body, don't have the authority to approve that. But if it's not, then if it's just recognizing them, I think that's different.
I think
So-
the contract itself might have to go through the municipalities. That might be a little different, but
Possibly.
the recognition is
So
just
I think that answers my point of order.
okay.
You
All right.
call me.
Yep.
I vote aye.
And Teresa?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes. I will have this sent over to you tonight, Jason. All right.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for inviting me. And if you ever want to get in touch with me, feel free to, if you have any more questions or concerns. So my phone's
Thanks,
always on.
Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for coming.
All right, we'll move on to our next item of business is discussion and possible action regarding grant opportunities. So I know FEMA has been providing grant opportunities, at least in this past year, 2020 year. There were several $1 million in grants awarded throughout the country, and quite a few municipalities in Wisconsin were able to secure funding for hiring fire department staff and firefighters. So I was looking into it to see if that's something that we could take advantage of going into the 2021 year. And they do have on here, there's fiscal year 2020. There's a second round of funding opportunity still. And that was posted on October 5th. So I was just checking to see with the deputy chiefs and the chiefs if this is something we might be able to explore as a possible means of obtaining funding for either this year yet or next year. If this is something we could look into and to see if this is something we're eligible for.
I think you may, are you referring to the SAFER grant?
It says Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program COVID-19 Supplemental.
Okay.
Which comes off of FEMA's website under the grant category for fire department assistant grants.
Okay. I'll have to take a look at that. I think if we come up with any grant, I think we probably need to employ the services of a grant writer. These are highly competitive and very time consuming. So I'm not opposed to doing that as long as the commission would approve the use of a grant writer.
Go ahead, Linda.
I was just thinking, I'm wondering if that might be something that we could ask Inga to do. I know that in my past experience at the municipal conference, I've usually been able to bring home a very nice list of grant opportunities for a variety of things, but since I didn't go this year, I didn't. But I know that she does a really good job of grant writing, and maybe she has even gotten some more information.
I don't have any information on this specific grant, so I can look into it and see potentially how complicated it is and talk to Ernie a little bit more about it.
So what I can do is I can forward this information over to you.
Yes, send that to us, John. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's something that I was just, I know that there are some grant opportunities available, but like you said, a lot of times we have so many departments in the country facing the same problem. They're all interested in pursuing financial opportunities to improve their budgets. So I can imagine, like you said, they're pretty competitive to actually go shoot for. So, all right. So we'll move on to our next.
Could I just ask a question, John?
No, go ahead.
So understanding that this would be potentially time consuming, would there be any compensation available for Inga at all? I realize that on the city side, she quite frequently is able to successfully achieve, attract and achieve some grants. If we could, I just don't know what that looks like. I'm not certain if there might be some concern with any timing of this, but if there is the potential for thousands of dollars to be available to the fire commission or to the fire department, I would love for us to be able to compensate her if necessary.
Oh, yes, I believe we need to compensate her.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
she works for the city. She doesn't work for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I just want to have that out there because I think that we are up against the clock, and I realize that maybe this isn't even an action. Well, it does say possible action on our agenda. So I just don't know if we can further have this discussion because, again, timing is everything here. So can we just explore what this might look like a little further and whether Inga is even interested? Chief
Right.
Rhodes, when you suggested this, did you have another grant writer in mind or anybody? Okay.
No, ma'am, but they're out there. I think you just have to ask around and look, and then interview various ones, and then but we're looking for ones that have experience in the firefighter grants.
And that's understood. I know that I've done a little of looking into these as well, and I know that there have been whole departments that have like outfitted the whole department. So knowing that that is the potential, and knowing how dire our situation is appearing right now as well, that anything would help.
No, thanks for bringing that up, Beth.
I forwarded that email over to both of you, Inga, Jenny, and Chief. So at your leisure, please review it and let me know what you think. If it's something that we might be able to work with, or if it's outside our purview and we're going to have to move on and look for other options if this doesn't seem like a good option for us. So, all right. Other than that, let's move on to the fire chief's report. Chief, all yours.
Hey, good afternoon. Good evening. First of all, I just really want to thank everybody for the conversation tonight. It's encouraging, and I'm really looking forward to the future. So moving on to the chief's report, 81 calls for last month. Training, we've done various training, evolution, self-contained breathing apparatus, initial pump operator, familiarization and utilization of power saws, and just daily ongoing training on the company level. So training's moving on. We're watching it though. We may slow it down. We may slow it down again because of COVID. Everybody has been definitely told to wear their mask and social distance when they can. We've actually moved the kitchen table in the station to prevent those from pulling their mask down and eating within that 6-foot social distance, which is critical to continue to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Another note too of importance is that Chief Maury's getting the bids in for the ambulances. They're coming in, they're running about $290,000. So we anticipate bringing that and putting that on the agenda next month for conversation. And I think you've all received Dan's email on the budget. As we know, we're looking at an overage in the wage category, roughly of about $30,000. And right now we're 42,000 over. So, some of that was, we did have to force some of our full-time employees to fill in on the gaps to cover. And that's definitely an overtime cost that, we really hardly ever want to try to, we want to try to avoid that too. So if you have any questions on that, Dan, Dan can answer, I can answer, but that's the end of my report, Mr. Chairman.
Could I ask 2 questions, Chief?
Yes, ma'am.
One question is, you mentioned earlier tonight that we had 4 new recruits. Is that the case? And then what's the timing of them becoming or getting on?
So it depends on their level of experience. Like, you can have a recruit that comes in that doesn't have any training at all, no fire certifications, no EMS, and so we would have to train them up. So we have a recruit process. We have introductory training, which we talk about processes and equipment, and we break them in on their turnout gear, their SCBAs, but they still need to meet the requirements of their live burn. Ideally firefighter 1 at a minimum, and then an EMS, first responder, EMT level training. So we have recruits that have nothing, and we have recruits that are in their firefighter 1 and 2 class. We have recruits that have their EMT that are completing their firefighter 1 and 2. So it varies. So hopefully, out of the 4, we have several that have their EMT. We have one that has the firefighter 1 and 2. We have one that's getting their firefighter 1 and 2. So it just kind of varies, but we'll take anybody and we'll train them up if we have to. It just takes time.
Absolutely. So actually, now I've got more than just one more question. The other question that led from that question was, how can we help with the morale, knowing what can we do right now? Knowing that you guys are hurting, you're tired, you've been sick, and what is it that we might be able to do to help?
I think a lot of it is like tonight, making decisions, moving forward. I think that, through the years we've delayed decisions for whatever reason. And I think what the men and women of the fire department want to see right now is action. And they want to know where this is going. And obviously the wage, I think, can help a lot. But, we've, myself and Chief Morey and Chief Parker and Chief Lucas, we meet and we know that it's important to get everybody back to the mission. It's very important to do that. And so we're just trying to, patch things together. But I think moving on the commission, I know we're still looking at the fire station. I know we're waiting to understand what type of fire station, but, that decision's on the burner too. And don't forget it. We need to make sure it doesn't go to the back burner, but it's still up front and we keep an eye on it. So I think it's that type of action.
Awesome. One of the other thoughts, and this is literally just throwing this out here. It stemmed from one of the town meetings that I had attended. I had a former member of the department, and it was a long time ago that this person had been part of the department, but he approached me and said, if nothing else, I'd love to drive the water truck. And, I know that you guys are just strapped and they're beaten, and I'm just wondering if there's anything that an old farmer like me could do, but I would love to just be able to drive the truck. And so again, obviously this isn't something that we can just step in and say, sure, let's call them up. But I wonder if there's a program out there that we might be able to involve the community and in something like that, what it would look like insurance-wise and all the rest. So I just wanted to put that out there. The last question that I had involves cleaning, and what are we doing currently in the station in terms of, do we have a service that comes in, or and what are the cleaning products? Do we have?
So we just use over the counter, or like I can't remember the commercial brand, commercial soaps we use to clean the fire stations. The crews clean every day. Every day they clean the toilets, they clean the floors, they mop the floors, they vacuum their quarters, they clean the kitchen. So the station, it just looks, it's old, right? And it may look dirty, but it's clean. And
oh, no. And please, there is no, I'm coming to this from a nursing standpoint and from a business standpoint as well. And just wondering if we're using like a hospital grade cleaning, so know that there is a new product, or not new product, it's not new whatsoever, it's new to me. I just got this really cool spray that it is, it's a concentrate, and it will clean and disinfect all surfaces, and we just let it air dry. So it's in this pack, and you fill the pack and you spray it on. I would love, if you guys are at that point that you're in need of something like that, to be able to bring that over and just spray down the kitchen, if you will. And just, it's all very safe. Yeah. But it's EPA registered to kill the virus. And so.
Yeah. So, I mean, send me the link. Let me look at it. I know we have the proper cleaning solutions to kill the virus right now. And yeah, it's been a huge priority for us when this started, right? So
absolutely.
And I feel really comfortable that we have.
Oh, again, it's not a question as to whether or not. It's more like, is this something that would help?
Yeah, sure.
It's not whether you're doing it.
Send it over to us. We'll take a look at it. Love to. And then as far as somebody wanting to drive the truck, and I'm trying to remember, and my things run together. It's getting late in my mind, but I believe before you can drive a truck, an emergency vehicle, a tender, or an engine, you have to be a certified motor pump operator in the state of Wisconsin. And I think that you have to be a certified firefighter first, and then you get your motor pump operators. So I think it'd be very difficult to have somebody, they have to go through the training. So we're right back to where we started. I like that idea though.
Anybody else have anything for the chief? All right, we'll move on to the president's report. Scott?
Yeah, hey guys. Not much to report on the association side. We did have a meeting. The association met. It was just to discuss some inter-association personnel issues, and we also discussed canceling the pancake breakfast. So the pancake breakfast has been canceled for 2020. We're kind of hoping that things are going to still work out for us, but we're just hoping to hopefully come back to it next year when we get back to this time. That's really about all the association's got.
Okay, so
Oh,
Linda?
I just
you guys
want,
got any questions?
I just want to let Scott and the association know that we appreciate everything that you're doing, and we understand that this is a difficult time for you and all of the rest of the EMTs and paramedics and firefighters and Jenny and Chief, and you know, you guys are, it's been hard and you're holding up, and we appreciate it. And you know, everybody is thinking about you.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. It's always very nice to hear. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Any general items? Do the deputy chiefs or any other commissioners have anything else they needed to bring before that are not currently scheduled?
Clarify, so who's making the initial contact with the fire department's attorney to forward documents?
Would be you and Anissa.
Brian, if you're comfortable doing it, it's fine. I can do it, or if you're comfortable doing it, that it doesn't matter to me.
That's fine. I probably would just forward what I sent to our attorney, but I don't know if I saved the email address for our attorney, so.
I have it, Brian. I can send it to you.
Yeah, so just send me that contact information and I can forward basically what I sent our attorney.
Any other general items?
Everybody be safe.
Well, that puts us at our next meeting being November 18th. I kind of like the idea of starting the meetings a little earlier, simply because we have had quite a bit to talk about. I don't expect the next meeting to be any shorter than it has been tonight. Does 6 o'clock still work for people as far as a good meeting time?
Works for me.
Keeps people from having to get up so late or stay up so late, if it gets to be 9 o'clock or 9:30 by the time we dismiss and adjourn. So
I will be out of town then the 18th. I fly back on the 19th. I don't know if there'll be a conflict with it being so close to my flight back, so I may or may not be able to join. I have the ability to join where I'm at, but from a scheduling standpoint, I may not be there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then will you make sure that Anissa also has the information that you and John are going to share?
That's why I was going to share those emails, especially with Jenny, since she's the official record keeper.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
all right, so I will change the time to 6 p.m. for the next meeting. So just be aware that I'm going to be making that change. It'll be 6 instead of 7. It sounds like that works best with most people, and considering, like I said, the conversations we've been having, I don't want to keep people up too late at night. So if there's no other information to discuss, motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Linda to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Conversation.
Thank you.